Any Thor fans out there will know that Ulik the Troll has been one of the mainstay adversaries for Thor across the years. He's been menacing the god of thunder since his earliest days, and still continues to be a threat all these years later. And there's a certain charm to this big, hulking giant monster that has him returning again and again, and has quite rightfully secured his place as one of Thor's leading members of his rogues gallery. And I'm delighted to say that Hasbro Marvel Legends has finally given him a deluxe release. Now, it's not actually his first appearance because he was released exclusively at the time through this convention exclusive Thor set. Sadly, I was never able to get my hands on this set, and the one figure that really stood out to me more than any of the others in this set was the Ulik. So I'm delighted that Hasbro finally decided to release him single-carded as a deluxe figure. Now, anyone who's seen my Marvel Legends reviews in the past will know I'm a huge fan of this deluxe figure release idea. Yes, they tend to be a little bit more expensive than the main single-carded release, but you are essentially getting a builder-figure for a very low price point. If, like me, you tend to pick and choose which characters you're going to pick up from the Marvel Legends line, then a Build-A-Figure set can be very hard work if you don't want every figure in that wave. So I, for one, greatly appreciate having the option to pick up just the figure I want at a slightly higher price point, but it's certainly more affordable than it would be on the secondary market. Plus, they tend to throw in some extra goodies as well. So, as ever, let's start by looking at the packaging. By now, if you've picked up any of these deluxe figures in the past, you will kind of know what to expect. It is that sort of trapezoid shaped box. It is mostly window display. There's not a lot of artwork on the front of this box, but that's okay because the figure is loud and proud. On the side panel, we do have some artwork, and this, I believe, is lifted directly from a comic book. Now, I don't know the artist by heart, but it is nice to see some authentic comic book art here, which neatly captures the spirit of the character, and I think this looks really good, very displayable, and of course you can line this up with other figures in your collection if you want to put them on the shelf. And on the reverse, we have a much bigger version of this image, a full image there, which looks really cool. Again, very presentable in its own right. If you want to put this on display in a glass cabinet, you can do, and it looks pretty cool. And then we have a little bit of bio about the character. And as for the figure himself, well, first impressions is that he's quite chunky, he's quite weighty as he should be, and that's always a pleasing first sign. Now, he does come with two heads, and I have to say the sculpting on both is pretty excellent. I think this is a really great sculpt. I love the detailing of the teeth coming out of the of the lips there. I think they've caught the likeness of the character very well. Of course, there's been multiple interpretations of the character across the years, but there's certain things that are caught the character. That big metal skull on his chest, for example, the hair and the tusks coming out of his mouth there. I think they've caught this character very nice, and it is generic enough to be any version of the character, I think. But looking with a critical eye, as ever, a fantastic sculpt deserves a fantastic paint app as well, because that really enhances or brings out all the detail that's gone and all the effort that's gone into the sculpt. I think the sculpt is absolutely magnificent. They've done a really great job of bringing this character to life. Just look at the expression on the face there. I think this is lovely stuff. But I think it's a shame there isn't more of a paint wash running over it, just to enhance the hair, just a black paint wash in there, just to make it look a little bit more real, a bit more lived in, would have been fantastic. Again, likewise, over the face sculpt there, just a little bit of shading here and there would have just really enhanced what is a really fantastic sculpt. Likewise, the body is really nicely sculpted. I think we will recognise some of these parts from some of the other more recent builder figures, but the torso looks to be brand new. We have that scale mail, we have the big bulging straps on his shoulders, and of course we have that skull that has all been sculpted into the figure itself. And it's nice to see some scratches and scrapes and indents into that skull to make it look a little bit more battle damaged. This is really nicely painted. It has a slightly metallic sheen to the skull, which I think is a nice job. Likewise, the scale mail actually has like a slight metallic green paint, which looks really good, very attractive to the eye, and there's lots of different colours here, and it's all nicely painted without any smudging, which looks pretty decent. The only criticism I would have is that the necklace just feels a little bit too cheap. It's a very thin, slim plastic, which is very light, and it doesn't really have any paint apps on it at all, which just gives it a slight cheap feel, which is a shame. On his back, you can see up close some more of that scale mail and the paint apps there, which look really good. But you can also see some of the detailing on the arms as well. These are really nicely sculpted with all the veins and the bumps and the cracks, which look really good. And they're nicely painted as well. We can see some of the brown shading on the tops of the arms there, which look really good. The hands are also really nicely moulded and nicely painted for the most part as well. Again, we can see some of that brown shading, which looks really good, and of course we have the brown of the fingernails, which is a nice touch, and then we have those sort of metal knuckle dusters that he has there. Now, it's a shame that there isn't more shading on those knuckle dusters, but as it is, I think they've done a pretty nice job. And then finally, of course, we have the legs, and as we can see, the feet have been sculpted especially for this figure. They look really, really good. I think they've done a great job of these, and again, the shading is pretty consistent with what we've seen in the rest of the figure, so this is pretty good. As you'd hope, he has a pretty great articulation scheme. He's got a ball joint in the head, allowing his head to move from side to side and nod forwards and backwards as much as that hard plastic beard will allow. Now he's also got ball joints in the shoulders, allowing the arms to kick up and out, which is pretty cool, and this is supported by an upper bicep swivel. There's also a single joint at the elbow, allowing the arm to bend to roughly 90 degrees, and then there is a pin swivel at the wrist, allowing that wrist to rotate 360 degrees and hinge forwards and backwards. Now, again, because of the moulding, the sculpting of the hair on the flat of the hand, he can't really bend it too far forwards, unfortunately. But he does have a swivel at the waist, allowing him to spin from side to side, and then he also has an ab crunch as well. And whilst he can't lean forward particularly very much, he can lean back a pretty good distance, which is great. He's got ball joints in the hips, allowing the legs to kick out and kick forwards and backwards, and there's also an upper thigh swivel as well, allowing that leg to rotate all the way around. Now there is also finally a single joint at the knee, again bending to roughly 90 degrees, and then a final ankle pivot so the foot can arc from side to side and of course hinge forwards and backwards. He also comes with a few extra goodies, including 2 closed fists, an open snarling head, and his hammer. There's enough here to keep this figure pretty interesting in terms of your display, because you can swap out these various elements to create some very different, distinct looks with him, and I think they all work really very well. For a height comparison, here he is standing next to the 80th anniversary Thor figure from the Marvel Legends line. As you can see, he does tower above Thor, and these scale really, really nicely against each other. I have to say there's something very dynamic about this figure. Virtually whatever pose you put him in, he looks visually striking, and the potential to create really fun, dynamic displays is virtually endless. So for me, I'm happy to give this figure the full 5 stars. I didn't expect this figure to be as fun or as impressive as it actually turned out to be. I think everything comes together to make a really fantastic figure here. The articulation scheme is wonderful, it's very smooth, the sculpting is great, the paint tabs for the most part are pretty solid too, and the accessories are plentiful and fun. And best of all, it seems that no matter what you do with this figure, he just looks awesome and super impressive all the time. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.